Sitting, he's going at them again. I can already stop booing me. Yeah, I've got a point to say. Now look, I'm not gonna highlight where Manchester United happen to be in the Premier League table, but they are 13th in the league. But to be honest, that league position could be excused if stuff off the pitch was looking better. Now, what is one thing that characterised Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United? Ruthlessness. If a player, if a squad felt like he dropped below the level that was required, he was out of there, no matter what his name or his pedigree was. Yapstam, Roy Keane, Eric Jemba, all names that at some point were forced out of Manchester United. And it feels like that ruthlessness has been gone for ages, until one man, one big business individual entered the fray, axing high up board members immediately, raising ticket prices, cancelling Christmas parties, all because the team's doing badly. Maybe Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS have got that ruthlessness back, or maybe they're incompetent. You see, when Manchester United's footballing operations transferred over from the Glazers to INEOS, some United fans were rejoicing. But a lot of people at the time, including myself, were a little bit more hesitant based on the record that INEOS have in the footballing world. I'm here to tell you, these decisions are not good for anybody. Sir Jim Ratcliffe and INEOS are looking pretty evil over at Old Trafford. It's been a turbulent few months, realistically, for United fans and for their new kind of part ownership. Playing staff have underperformed, they've had a manager that wasn't doing a good job, and the facilities are falling apart. The hot tub hasn't been renovated since George Best last stepped in it, and Old Trafford is completely falling apart. Gotta tell you what, Sir Jim isn't the only rat that's drowned at Old Trafford this season. Lots of big decisions have needed to be made, and some big decisions have been made by Sir Jim, including most recently taking some pretty harsh punishments to some of the everyday staff at the club by, for example, cancelling the Christmas party, replacing £100 bonuses that each of the, lower level staff members, guys that work in the club shop, janitors, for example, replacing those £100 bonuses they get with £40 Marks and Spencer's gift cards. £40 in Marks and Spencer's is a sandwich and a drink, bruv. And these have all been things that have gained a lot of traction on social media because people have been questioning why INEOS and the bigger, the big board of directors would want to do this to some of their staff. This especially after threats of redundancies for 25% of their workforce. Now, the reason for the Christmas party celebrations, and by the way, we will get onto the bigger topics in a second, was because it felt like it was going to be unnecessary or inappropriate based on the fact that the club are currently sat 13th in the Premier League table. Yes, Jim, Linda, who's deputy canteen expert, is the reason why Rasmus Højlund can't put the ball in the back of the net. Though, to be fair, she might be the reason why the club has such a low hygiene rating. Should be wondering what she's done to get arrested when she tries to set up a buffet amongst the staff members either way.
What is the charge? A succulent Chinese meal?
Anthony's on about £10 million a year or something, and all he's done is recreate the Beyblade, but the Christmas party is where Sir Jim draws the line. And I tell you what, it won't just be the staff members that are concerned about this. Footballers are going to be fuming as well. Luke Shaw will be left disgusted at the dinner table, realising that he's not going to get his 3 metric tons of gravy this year.
Never see this face again.
Arguing at the dinner table when the pigs in blankets fund has been diminished. Now these things seem small, alright? Without any context whatsoever, you're probably asking yourself, Niran, why should we care if people are getting £60 less bonuses if they're staff members at the club because the team's doing badly? Why should I care about a lack of Christmas party? But I think what I'm seeing here is a big contrast between the working class staff members at this football club and a lot of the higher up board of directors. And obviously the playing staff, coaching staff as well. As I mentioned, there's been a wide-ranging sort of redundancy scheme or schedule that is getting put into place at Manchester United. Again, a lot of these jobs haven't quite gone yet, but the plan was to reduce the workforce by 25%, which comes to around about 250 to 300 jobs at the club. Now, that's a lot of people that would be losing their job, and it would make their workforce lower than a lot of the other bigger clubs in the world. Manchester United, you've got to remember, whilst they might have quite a high, turnover or high amount of staff, just generally speaking, are also one of the biggest clubs in the world and therefore generate some of the most money of any club in the world. Like your Real Madrids, your Barcelonas, teams that are, just huge heavy hitters no matter what continent you're in. You could walk around Botswana for about 20 minutes and you'll probably see some kind of Manchester United memorabilia. So them having a bigger workforce is justified. But not only that, there's then been the lowering of treatment of these key staff members when it comes to bonuses, when it comes to how they're being treated. Some of them them have even said that they find that they're being treated worse than they were when the club was solely run by the Glazers. There was no free bus travel for staff members when they went to the FA Cup final at Wembley. There's been a proposal to halve the amount of funding that is going to the club's Disabled Supporters Association from £40,000 down to 20k. And on top of that, they're also raising ticket prices from an already high value for not only adults, but also for pensioners and for children as well. Now, as I said at the start of the video, this might sound like ruthless cost cutting. This is a big billionaire operator that's come into a football club and said, hold on a second, lads, we've got too many staff, we've got too many people earning too much money, we're sorting that out. We're raising the funds that this club can earn. But at any point of any of the things that I just explained just then that have been proposed or have already been done by Manchester United's new owners when it comes to their footballing operations, at what point have any of those things affected the higher earners at the club? People have seen all this stuff happen and have commented on social media saying that big decisions needed to be made when it comes to earnings, when it comes to income at Manchester United. It's a bloated workforce. There's ways that they need to cut corners and save money. But all of these decisions are at the detriment of the working class staff that work around the club rather than the multi-million pound footballers that are underperforming currently out on the pitch. It's bad enough that these people have to work for Manchester United in the first place. Lowering their working conditions even further is disgusting. Sir Jim will be devastated when he finds out that it's actually illegal to pay his staff £2.37 per hour. This is not fair or very ethical cost cutting. It is cost cutting to a degree because you're only paying people a £40 bonus instead of a £100 bonus, but the wages at this football club are still astronomical. The spending over the summer is still absolutely huge in comparison to most clubs across the country, and the board members seem happy to cancel all of their staff's pension plans while splashing out £68 million for Fabian Ruiz next summer. And one thing I think that has highlighted this even more just this week alone has been the firing of Dan Ashworth. Now, if you're a Manchester United fan, you realise there's been a lot of change over the summer, and that partly is probably some of the reason as to why the club has been struggling to start off this campaign. There's been a lot of change at obviously ownership level, at board of directors level, there's been a lot of new players come in, and of course there's even a new manager at the moment after Erik ten Hag's sacking. But over the last 12 months, as INEOS have come in to deal with Manchester United's footballing operations, they've hired a lot of senior people. They brought in a new chief executive, ex of Manchester City, a new chief finance officer who'd worked with INEOS for about 25 to 30 years. They hired Jason Wilcox as a technical director who used to work for Southampton, but the key one, and one that took a long time to get across the line, one that was basically an entire saga for about 6 months, was the hiring of former Newcastle man and the astronomical compensation that was required for a person of that job. Dan Ashworth, again, came in from Newcastle United, a lot of drama surrounding that. So when he was hired, after all of that drama and with a significant financial element to the deal as well, for him to now have left the club 5 months later because they didn't think he was up to the job, that is absolutely crazy. At least take Mason Mount with you, for fuck's sake. How are you in a job for 5 months? That is Liz Truss settings. He's been outdone by a cabbage, probably, somewhere in the canteen. Again, the hygiene rating is bad, guys. I'm not going. Linda's not been doing her job. They let Erik ten Hag stay at this club about 11 months longer than he needed to be, but he decided to be ruthless with old Dan over here. Truthfully, there were a lot of reasons, apparently, as to why Dan ended up losing his job here. It was to do with clashes amongst some of the other directors, as well as Sir Jim himself, his lack of decisiveness when it came to a replacement for Erik ten Hag, but also because of his part to play in the summer transfer signings. Though again, not that long for them to have actually taken shape, although he was very much involved in the signing of Joshua Zirkzee, so maybe that's enough for him to lose his job anyway. He was also influential for signing Lenny Yoro, who in fairness he was unlucky with because he basically immediately got injured, Manuel Ugarte, who seems like a bit of an overspend to be honest with you, and Mazraoui, who in fairness has been very good. It was a summer of huge spending, however, around £280 million, and generally speaking, not much in terms of return. Dan Ashworth will have had some harsh words when collecting all the players together that he signed in the summer as he was handed his P45.
But before I go, y'all are trash.
Now the crazy thing about this is that Jim Ratcliffe was very keen on bringing Dan in. He said that he's one of the best sporting directors in the world. He lauded him basically and said that he'd have a long prosperous career at Manchester United. They'd done an incredible job to bring him in, only for him to be gone 5 months later. Now obviously he wouldn't have known that Dan was going to clash with other members and board members that he brought in, but it does smack at, again, not only inconsistency, ruthlessness Yes, but also incompetence. As is, of course, the fact that Manchester United sit 13th in the league table right now, having had the season start under Erik ten Hag's leadership when in reality that should have never been the case in the first place. I mean, I've already spoken, to be honest with you, about how Erik ten Hag was treated at United. I actually felt sorry for him. I might not have ever said this, to be honest with you, because I'm a bit of a, I just take the piss out of every situation footballing wise, but I did feel sorry for Erik in the build up to the FA Cup final of last season, because although he won it with Manchester City, he'd been told that he wasn't going to carry on the job, only for United to flirt with every free agent manager under the sun, get told no by all of them, and then decide to carry on the season this campaign with Erik anyway, which undermines everything about him as a position as manager, because he knows that the board didn't even want him to start the season anyway. He has absolutely no job security whatsoever, and the players probably don't respect him all that much because they know he should have been sacked last season anyway. So no surprise, he starts the campaign absolutely fucking abysmally, and he gets sacked in favour of Ruben Amorim anyway. But all of these things, I mean, that genuinely, right, if the Glazers were in charge of that whole situation that happened, quite rightfully, everyone would be slapping them in the media, because that's a show of true incompetence. To get the managerial situation that wrong, to publicly be that against the manager that you currently have, only for him to win a trophy and then for you to U-turn completely, is incompetence again. Starting the season with him, a joke of a decision, whether he'd won the FA Cup or not. Then again, I'm pretty sure Jim was a big advocate of Brexit, so his club having absolutely nothing to do with Europe whatsoever is probably a positive to him. And it might sound like I'm being harsh, you know, Chelsea, Todd Bowley, they had some of the biggest teething issues you're ever going to see at a big football club in this country. Todd managed to take a side that had won the Champions League to quite literally 10th in the league by stripping all of their experience away, signing an entirely new team, wasting £1 billion and then looking absolutely shit at the end of it. But, you know, 2 years later, after Todd Bowley took over the club following the Roman Abramovich sanctions, and Chelsea looked like at least a coherent football club again, and they're only 4 points off Liverpool as I record this video, at the second place in the Premier League table right now. There's actual signs of progress, alright? There's good players in and amongst the shit show that was there before. Cole Palmer's performing. You've got Enzo Fernandez starting to hit some form. Moises Caicedo looks the same as he did at Brighton. These players have actually had some time to gel. Todd has realised that maybe scattergunning every single player under the age of 22 in the whole of Europe probably isn't the best way to deal with things anymore, and he's calmed things down just a little bit. Maybe that same, you know, that same level of learning is needed for INEOS and Sir Jim. But we can't afford them that sort of generosity. This isn't their first venture into owning a football club, as I've mentioned before. INEOS own OGC Nice, a French side, over in Ligue 1, and to be honest with you, since they took over the club, it's been mediocre at best. They've not really expanded on where they were before. There were these 2, 3, 5 year plans and promises about where OGC Nice would be, which was to be fighting Paris Saint-Germain at the top of the Ligue 1 table and performing in the Champions League. It's fair to say that's not happened at all. They've been eliminated from the Europa League, bottom of the league table twice, and I think their highest position since they took over in 2019 has been a 6th place. There's been plenty of fan protests against their French ownership, and those French fans are even less happy now, seen as general interest and priorities seem to have switched over to Manchester United completely now. And that's without even talking about Lausanne, who are a side in Switzerland, the first team that INEOS took over, a once sort of giant of Swiss football. They've won the league several times. They took over and got them relegated pretty much immediately. They bounced back and forth between the Swiss Pro League and 2nd Division, but since INEOS have taken over, I think they took over in 2015, they've not got anywhere near European football, let alone actually winning the Swiss League. Everywhere INEOS goes, mediocrity follows. And everywhere INEOS go, cuts follow. Because, like as I mentioned with Manchester United, a lot of these like small little details that are being taken out and thrashed out against some of the, you know, lower ranking staff members at the club, these things have happened everywhere Jim Ratcliffe has gone throughout his entire businessman career. There's a reason why he was at one point, I think he might still be, the richest man in the UK. And I say in the UK loosely because he lives in Monaco to avoid all tax hits. This man takes over unloved industries and companies, cuts loads of costs, and then makes slightly more money on them. That is exactly what he's gonna do with Manchester United. Him and his company have a long history of bullying his workers at oil refineries up in Scotland into taking reduced working rights, lower pay freezes, and even banning strike action, all whilst asking the taxpayer to fund his luxurious lifestyle, tax that he physically does not pay because he doesn't live in the UK and he's like registered as living out in Monaco instead, a tax haven. They have a shocking environmental record. They even accidentally released chemicals into a river in Manchester back in 2016. You don't want any more water to be a problem in the local Manchester area, because half of it ends up on home fans' heads when Old Trafford collapses in any time there's a light drizzle. Sir Jim Ratcliffe might be a Manchester United fan, but there's one thing that he loves more than Manchester United, and that is money. And I'm gonna be so unbelievably honest, United fans, yeah? There might be some performance increase. Well, I mean, there has to be, really, doesn't there? Because Ruben Amorim, I believe, is a great manager. I mean, great as in, like not like great historically. I mean, he's a very good manager, in my opinion. Tactically, I think he's astute, and he's already managed to get quite a bit out of some players that Erik ten Hag was never able to utilize, even if the results have still been a little bit lackluster. Again, you know, you're looking at potentially a bit of a changeover when it comes to certain personnel, and I know you've had this for the last 10, 12 years. But on the pitch, I'm sure there will be some level of improvement. I can't lie, lads. Off the pitch, it still looks like the Glazers are running things. Yeah, there might have been some optimism and some fight in prying away some big dons from rivals like Manchester City and Newcastle. But at what cost? At ripping the identity of the club away? At making some of the most key workers at the club redundant, or making them feel completely unwelcome? Yes, Marcus Rashford might now have more kids to feed because their parents haven't got a job anymore. But if you thought the Glazers were going to risk taking away the soul of Manchester United, then I'm afraid to tell you that INEOS might well do even more than that. But what do you make of Jim Ratcliffe's ownership so far of the footballing operations, again, rather than the overall ownership of the club so far? Obviously, United are struggling. It's going to take a pretty superhuman return to end up fighting for top 4 or even top 6 potentially in the league, because they still don't quite look at the races even under Ruben Amorim. What needs to change, generally speaking, without saying the ownership? Let me know, United fans, what you think down in the comments section. If you have enjoyed this video, though, feel free to slap a like on it, and of course, subscribe if you're new to the channel. You can also become a member. That's really one of the best ways to support the channel. The members are on the screen right now. You get cool perks like seeing videos like these a little bit early, as well as emotes and badges as well when it comes to premieres for the box series and some other cool stuff as well. I'll have some exclusive content going out soon. You can also follow me on social media. It is @officialfng on Twitter and on Insta. But it's been a pleasure ranting at you guys today. Have a wonderful day, enjoy yourselves, and goodbye.